Hello and welcome to part 5 of building your very own website application. In the last few parts we looked at creating and building your very first page. We also looked at HTTP methods, and we looked at connecting pages together using a button. In this part we're going to touch upon HTTP responses, which is a key area, and I'm also going to show you very briefly something called Bootstrap, which is a very useful HTML repository, and it's all completely free as well. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is talk to you about HTTP responses. What HTTP response is, it's when you try to connect to a web page, that web page will throw back a response. And that response comes in codes. So you have responses in the 100s, 200s, 300s, 400s, and 500s. And the most common one, which you may have seen, is the 404, which it means the page is not found. So what you've done there is you've tried to connect to a page, and it's thrown back a 404 response. It's not found. So it can't connect to that page. Nothing's happened. And what I'm going to do is show you a very useful web page. I think I've shared with you a similar site on HTTP methods, but this also does HTTP, what we call status codes, response status codes. And as mentioned here, it dives in a lot more detail about the response code. So the most common one is 404 not found. There's also 200, which is the most common one as well, which is you've connected successfully and the status is okay and you can just keep going. So 200 you don't normally see as a message 200 because it normally means that you've connected to the page and you can do whatever you want. For example, me connecting to this page, it was a 200 response, it worked out well, and I'm just on the page doing what I want. There's also another one you may have seen is 403, which is forbidden. So you may have found that if you've logged into a site and you've accessed certain pages, then you've logged out and you've tried to go to those certain pages, it may be that you can only access those pages if you've logged in, or that whole page is just not available to you or not allowed to see it. Pen testers quite like 403 pages because it shows that there's information they've got to a page where they shouldn't really be seeing, and then there's just the next step of trying to get into it to see the information. I just want to pause right there just to say that please do subscribe to my channel and do follow me on Twitch, on YouTube as well, and take a look out for me on TikTok and other channels in the future. Cool. So going back to the Flask application. So what you can do is you can go like this, type in comma 200, and what the 200 does is it returns a response. So not only do we get an HTTP response, but we can also return a response as well. And you can do other methods. You can specify a 404 page not found if you really want to, or other status code methods. So what lots of people do, and it is good practice, is if you just make sure that you provide like a status code at the end of your sort of rendering your template. So the next thing I want to show you in this tutorial is something called Bootstrap. Now Bootstrap is pretty much a website. You may have heard it before, but let me just go to it and I'll show you. It's essentially a repository of free HTML, and so you can please do check this out in your own time. I'll put a link to both the HTTP responses and the Bootstrap in the description below. But what you can do is it gives not just talks about HTML, but actually provides you HTML code, file, show code here as well, file input, and so on and so forth. But what this does is it saves a lot of time in building your own HTML, especially when it's like navigation bars. Man, navigation bars are a nightmare. But with Bootstrap, you can have something very quickly to show on the page that looks pretty decent. One thing I will say is things like this that come with, when they show you the images on Bootstrap, the image won't be pulled across as well. So don't get confused or annoyed if it doesn't look how it is, because images really do make things look stand out. So if we go back to my forms thing I had, let's go right back to where I had my forms. Here we go. So for example here, this is made up of a couple of images, although it doesn't look like it, it is. And so what I've done is I've done show code, copied all this in here, and this is not the full HTML. This is the HTML of that component, just to make you aware. So what you do is you go to your page, let's say here I've got a login form, you put in your starter and your finish at the end, and then you copy and paste in your component. So here this is exactly what I've done. I've gone to that page which we went to, I've copied this form component here, copy the code, I've gone into this Python here and I've pasted this code here, and straight away that's given me a form I can work with. So we can now open this with the live server, and we can see here this is what we have. Notice it doesn't look the same as the Bootstrap page, and that's because the Bootstrap page has these images and there's font variations stuff going on in the background, which hasn't been transferred across. So it's just something to be aware of. We can still work with this. The functionality is still there. It's just aesthetically and visually, it's different. Even if this is not what you want to end up with, this is still saved a hell of a lot of time, and then you just add the images on top. I'm not really focusing on the HTML and making it look really good in this series, but I am focusing on the functionality, and the functionality is what we're going to focus on. So I'll probably keep this as it is like this, but there's tons of HTML resource on there, and I'm pretty sure even in the Bootstrap website it will show you how you can add those images and make it look like what you're seeing. Like I've shown you, I have actually done that here just now, but we're going to now modify this. In fact, actually what I'm going to do first is we're going to run it, and I'm going to show you these 3 pages. So the last part I showed you the first page linking to the second page. And so this time we're going to show you the first page, second page, and the login form which we've downloaded from Bootstrap. Notice here we've got a 404 not found. You don't see the 404 here, but what's very useful is at the bottom here you can see that it says 404. Like if I just zoom in a bit, there we go. See the 404. So if we go back to our page, we can see here 404 not found. That's fine because we've got no page linked to our first page, and we can go straight to first page, and we can see here we've got a first page, my first paragraph, exactly what we had in the last part. Click me, second page, some text back. So what I want to do now is put in a login, which we put in as our third page here, and we come to our page here. But what I want to do now is link this sign in button, so when you press it, it goes to our first page, and that is the beginnings of our website. So let's make that happen. So first things first is we need to, so we've already rendered our third page, our login page, by doing something very similar to we did above with our first page and second page, almost exactly the same, except we called our login form here our app root is login and our template is login form.html. And now what we need to do is have it so that when we press the sign in button here, it goes to our first page. So let's do that very quickly together. Easiest way is to just make use of what we already have, just copy and paste like this. So copy this, go to our login form. One thing you may realize is that it can seem a bit complex straight away, but there are comments around. It does help you a lot. And we can just add the on click in here like so. We want this going to our first page, not our second page. There we are. So we save that, We go back to our web app. Let's just restart everything just to make sure we're starting everything from scratch, something I quite like to do. We run it, and then let's see if this works. Here we go, sign in, and this should go to our first page. Here we go, first page. And then now we go backwards and forwards on our first, second page. So that's it for this video. It's a very quick one, or a quickish one, but what we've done is we've successfully created a semi-decent looking login page, HTML-wise, and I've shown you and talked to you a bit about HTTP responses.